Good day to everybody. Yo, 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 this is John, and you're listening to John's Take. It's a podcast from Keiro. Today, our guest is someone who's kind of a vital cog in the community, our Japanese American community. He's been very, very active in all levels of the community from the time he was, pretty much a youngster. He's very well versed and can talk about many, many, many different subjects. But the subject that we're going to delve into today is sports within the Japanese American community, and specifically basketball and the influence that basketball has had on different generations. And my guest today is Gene, and he is someone who, again, played basketball. Even before I met him, I knew of him because he had such a reputation in the basketball community that I was visiting a relative one day, and they're from Oxnard. And they kind of knew that Gene and I worked together and said, "Do you know Gene?" And I said, "Well, I know who he is." And they said, "He is such a good basketball player." I said, "Oh, really?" And then I finally met Gene, and he said, "Boy, he's tall. No wonder he's a good basketball player." But anyway, we're going to talk about basketball in relationship to the Japanese American culture. And the NAU basketball started. NAU is a Nisei Athletic Union, started about 1947 by publisher of the Rafo Shimpo, Aki Komai. And there's a very, very good article about the NAU, the history, the founding, the people that were involved in it, written by Chris Komai. And for anybody who is interested in that, you can go to keiro.org/news. And Chris's article is in there. It's very, very interesting and very informative about a lot of aspects that we really wouldn't look at otherwise. But if you look at the time frame, after World War II is a very difficult time for Japanese Americans. Many didn't even come back to the West Coast. Our family part settled in New York, Ohio, and in Michigan, never to return to California. But those that did come back faced a lot of obstacles. Racial prejudice was still rampant. There were housing restrictions, lack of employment, and folks had to get by the best they could. But the assimilation back into society, required just more than housing and jobs. It required kind of extracurricular activities, and sports became part of that reassimilation or resettlement into American culture. Very, very popular sports were golf, baseball, fishing, and something that really was popular with the Nisei generation was bowling. I remember, basically all of our neighbors were gardeners, and gardening back then was tough. It was a lot of work. But I remember them going out probably 2 evenings a week to these bowling leagues. And the leagues, actually are still in place today. Not quite as popular, but they're still there. And, that might be another subject we could delve into at a later date. But, going back to the different generations again, if you were to get a group of Issei together, first generation from Japan, and they were at a wedding or a funeral or an association meeting or something, one of the first questions that they would ask each other is, "What ken are you from?" or "Where in Japan is your family from?" So that was the Issei. The Nisei generation, in same situations, would be, "What camp were you in?" The relocation of the concentration camps during World War II. So there was, a kinship or a bond that could be established through that. And then for the Sansei generation, it wasn't where you were from in Japan, it wasn't what camp you were in, but did you play basketball? And if you did, for what team? And the importance of that, to me, was always very, very interesting, because I didn't play basketball, but it's been part of my life because everybody else I know Those are the questions they ask when they meet. And they asked me, did you play? I said, no. Why not? So it was athleticism and coordination, something like that. But anyway, Gene, you started when you were very young. And what drew you into basketball?
Well, first of all, John, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'd like to make a slight correction, though, in your introductory to me, that I wasn't that good. Okay, now you get better as you get older, right? Because you're become a legend in your own mind, and no one can see you play anymore because you don't play. So you keep on telling these stories as I tell my stories to my kids and now my grandkids, how good you were. So that's how I become a legend. But yeah, I started in elementary school. There's this Buddhist league that we played in during the summertime, and it was really fun. We only played like maybe 5, 6 games per summer, but we looked forward to that every single year. It was a highlight of our summertime was playing basketball.
What other sports did you participate in?
I played a lot of sports, but outside it was unorganized. And that's what was so different about playing basketball in the Japanese American community, because it was the only sport that we played that was actually organized. You had rules, you had a gym to play in, you had actually referees, scorekeepers, and so on and so forth. So it was very organized, very pleasing to play, and it was a lot of fun.
Bringing up the organization, when we talk about that NAU and Aki Komai and JAO, the Japanese American Optimist, putting together these teams and these leagues, I think we spoke a little bit before about, the teams would show up, you'd have your basketball, you play your games, and then you go out and eat afterwards. And where did that all, and you never thought about, first of all, getting the gyms, second of all, getting the referees, then you need scorers, and then you need somebody to clean up afterwards. But that wasn't, nobody knew where that all came from. It was there, right?
That's correct. And that's one thing I realized after I stopped playing, is that who in the world set this whole thing up? And again, you talk about Aki Komai. He was the person that really started the organized Japanese American basketball. But there's so many other people that to thank, and there's so many you can't even name. So I won't even try. But people like Chris Komai will have those names, and he won't miss any names. But you're right. Getting gyms, getting permits for the gyms is very hard, very difficult. Even today, it's very difficult. Having good referees, that was one of the key things, the essential things that we needed to having a good organized basketball game. You need scorekeepers. You need people who, as far as security is concerned. But one of the things that happened during this whole process is I want to mention the Rafushimpo too, because they were very important in establishing these leagues too. Because what happened was we played the game and it went into the Rafushimpo. And so you actually saw your name, in the box scores. You actually saw your team in standings on a weekly basis. And 95% of us would never see our names in a box score in a newspaper. But back then, it was so unique. It was so fun to actually see, hey, look, I scored 0 points. Or my friend scored 16 points. Or so-and-so on the other team, or my friend scored 20 points. But that's often overlooked on the Rafushimpo side with Aki Komai and, of course, Chris Komai. And they actually published box scores and standings. So it really kept our interest up on a week-to-week basis.
So when is it that you realize that basketball, over and above the game, played an important part in your life?
That's a good question. I think probably after I stopped playing basketball. When you look back and you have your kids start playing basketball, you start kind of looking back and thinking, God, what did I learn? What actual values did I learn from playing? And it's one of those things that I think why the Niseis, Iseis felt it was so important to play a sport like the game of basketball because, it teaches you teamwork, teaches you, to try your hardest at all times. Practice. You have to practice. You have to show respect. And also there's self-sacrifice. When you had a game, you had a game. You had to show up. There's really nothing else that will, throw that agenda off for you for that day. If you had a game at 4:00, guess what? You're showing up at 4:00. And we wanted to because it was so much fun. But also it created an awareness of our culture too, because you're around like people. You're among Japanese Americans sharing the same love for the game. And I look at, hopefully, my grandson who is playing right now, I hope he learns the same thing, especially with the dignity and respect and also trying your hardest and playing on a team. That's what I miss most when I think about my past basketball experience.
So, what were some of the positive and negatives from playing?
Well, positive, I got to play with my friends, and again, lifelong friends, and I got to play with my cousins, my brothers a couple times, and those were memories that you cannot erase. You keep on going back to that, and it was fun. You're never going to get an opportunity to do that again. As far as the low points of it, there wasn't really any low points that I remember. There wasn't any fights. There wasn't any arguments on the court. We had good referees, and we had excellent referees who always knew the rules and called the very objective games. Probably the only thing sometimes you had 2 games in one day. One time, a couple times, I had 3 games in one day. And that was pretty tough. That it was a lot of fun, but that was very tiring and exhausting. But all in all, it was a very positive experience.
What did it take, or was there a big difference between winning and losing?
Well, when you're on a lousy team, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Sure, we would like to win, and we of course we won games, and we lost a lot of games too. But it really didn't matter to us. I think once you get into higher level of the leagues, it mattered to them because they're really good and really talented basketball folks. But for us playing in the the mid levels and the lower levels, it was really just getting out there and enjoying the game. We had good coaches that taught us about the game, and to this day, I think for me, I know more about basketball than any other sport because I played and I was coached by very good coaches too. So, winning and losing, really, bottom line for the people that I know, that I played with, it really didn't matter. It really didn't. Because you know what? We'd go out to lunch, we'd go out to dinner, and we had a nice meal, and we joke about it if we lost by a lot, and we bragged about it when we won by a lot. So it was a lot of fun.
That's great. I noticed that a lot of people will go back to the times when they played. I know, several that it's almost like they played last week. They remember the score, they remember the gym, they remember the uniforms, they remember different plays. And this is, you're talking 60 years ago. And it's something that really is interesting because it made such an impact on their lives and all. And you spoke a little bit about your grandson. How do you think, let's see, what would be the easiest way to transfer the values that you learned and, like as folks learned playing? Is there a way to do that, or is it, pretty much up to them?
I think I'm very fortunate because my son-in-law, Eric, is actually coaching his son, my grandson, in FOR baseball and basketball. My son-in-law, Eric, grew up in the FOR leagues. So he really knows the ins and outs and the process of coaching. And, sometimes there's a little politics involved too. But he has dedicated himself to teach my grandson, Alex, the game of basketball. So that's really neat. So it's actually transferable by generation. If people in those generations actually were actually active in the sport itself. So my family's been very lucky. I think my grandson Alex is very lucky to have a father that's going to spend the time to coach him. So I think that transferable skills and values will automatically transfer into him.
Be a great experience for him. What I found is there's kind of a collateral, things that happen because of the basketball, because of the leagues, and I'm sure there are a multitude of incidents throughout the years of the NAU leagues of giving back to the community, and because of basketball. But there's one in particular I'd kind of like to get into. It's the Penthouse Yamasa Lakers, and they were coached by a individual by the name of Seiji Isamoto. Apparently, Mr. Isamoto really was like a father figure to a lot of these individuals, because I know a lot through work and through social aspects. And when I started playing golf years and years and years ago, there was a tournament that everybody wanted to play. It was the SIS, Seiji Isamoto Scholarship. And what these players had done, there were 6 that originally started this executive committee. And Mr. Isamoto passed away at a very, very young age, back in the early 80s, I believe. And he made such an impact on these folks that they wanted to prolong his legacy, to honor his legacy. And what they decided to do was put together a scholarship fund. And the scholarship fund would be to athlete scholars, not scholar athletes, but people who are good athletes and scholars, not the other way around. And you don't have to be going to Stanford or Ivy League or something. You can go to Cal State LA or Long Beach and do just as well. And so they figured that let's fund this through a golf tournament. Of course, none of them played golf. So they said putting this thing together the first couple of times was really tough. And so they asked people that knew what they were doing and got enough advice and did it the first time, and it worked out okay. Then they asked again, well, what can we do to make it better? And they said, well, you guys aren't going to make it. You don't know enough about it, and you just you ought to try something else. But they didn't. They just kept doing it. And they figured, well, if we can do this for 10 years and we can get maybe 10 scholarships, then that'll be just great. But one thing led to another. People found out about it. People wanted to help. And they kept going for, I think it was 25 years, until they finally ended the whole thing. They gave over 100 scholarships out and well over $100,000 back to the community. And it was all based on the Lakers. So, I'm sure there are other stories like that throughout the community, but I was so impressed with this because it was, these guys now, they were bankers, they worked in the trades, they were teachers, I don't think there are any doctors that came out of that group, but all very successful individuals and all still very close. I went to a Laker reunion a few years ago, and it was, again, it was like everybody was just so happy to see everybody. And, one of the things that they always ask is, man, you sure gained a lot of weight. But it's something that, I don't know that it'll ever happen again. They did such a good job. And, Gene, I know you're very involved in that with, helping them fundraise and all. Do you have any thoughts on your experience with SIS?
Funny you should ask that, because I was thinking about the Seiji Isamoto Scholarship Golf Tournament. Actually, I did a report on Seiji Isamoto when I was at Cal State Long Beach. I was a student at Cal State Long Beach. It was for an Asian American class. And I called him twice to do a phone interview with him. He's just a fascinating individual as far as what he saw the Japanese American community basketball situation was. Very nice, very giving. The Lakers used to host a Thanksgiving holiday tournament every year. And so people from all over the country used to come to that tournament. And I remember that there's a team from Chicago that used to come too, and Mr. Isamoto, and also don't forget Mr. Frank Kawana too, would host all these outsiders to their homes for a nice Thanksgiving dinner. That's the kind of guy he was. He was always giving. As far as the tournament is concerned, when we heard about it, my friend Kurt Tanioka was part of that Laker organization too. He reached out to both you and I and asked if we can help, that tournament. And so from then on, we supported that tournament from then on. But it was really neat to see that these former players wanted to honor, Seiji Isamoto for all the things that he did for them. I mean, he did everything, bought them dinner, gave them jobs, when they weren't working. Hey, can you do this for me? He had a landscaping business, I believe. Yeah, even, hey, can you go get me some chicken from Knott's Berry Farm, right? Because that's the best chicken there is. But you talk to people, and they just used to say so many nice things about Seiji and his wife, and also Mr. Kawana, too. It's just something very special that you would take 25 years and fundraise for scholarships of young adults, right, going to college. And to do that in the namesake of Seiji Isamoto, I think is just outstanding. And all those folks deserve a really good attaboy, as far as doing that for Seiji. One of the neat things when I used to go to the tournament dinners is that a lot of those former players used to bring pictures, old pictures to that. And so all the Lakers they'll come look at the pictures and say, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. And again, pictures worth 1,000 words, and everybody just had a really good time at those tournaments. And, I think a lot of those folks for doing that in memory of Seiji.
One thing I noticed also is, you talked about some of the former players that we know, and I always kind of marvel at every time they talk about Isamoto, it's Mr. Isamoto. It's never Coach, it's never Seiji, it's always Mr. Isamoto, and that shows a lot of respect. Any other thoughts on basketball in the community, Gene?
Well, I think one has to really take a look. If you want to take a look at where basketball is now, and it is at a crossroads. And any big organization like this, there's always going to be crossroads, right? Where you're going to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, or what have you. There are so many outstanding organizations out there that are doing a lot of good things. But, they're saying that, if you take the numbers on who's participating in leagues and tournaments, it's like 14,000 people. I don't think there's any community that can boast that we have organizations, as far as Japanese American basketball is concerned, that has 14,000 participants in a year. If I can kind of take a little bit of time and just give you an example, like the Tiger Youth Organization, their basketball tournament is one of the largest basketball tournaments in the nation. They have over 500 teams playing that annually. That's huge. Nikkei Games, that's going to happen in a couple months, hosted by OCO, and they're part of Nisei Week, has a 2-day 3-on-3, 4-on-4 basketball tournament at the Pyramid, which attracts over 2,000 participants, 6,000 spectators, 500 volunteers. I was involved with the tournament in Hollywood Dodgers. I used to participate in that as an OCO parent. And that's another extraordinary event. You have all these teams, hundreds of teams, going to Las Vegas. And these are little kids now. They're being sheltered around by their parents. It's hot over there. Hotels are crowded. You can't get restaurants, for 20 people, especially during the summertime. But you know what? The teams and families always show up. They're always supporting their kids. I wake up early in the morning, so I go down to the casino just to look around. And what you see is you actually see parents up early, and they're coming back to through the casino with bags of McDonald's breakfasts for the kids. And they shuttle them around for the next 2 days. That to me is just remarkable what our community does as far as supporting sports within the Japanese American community. It's huge, and the infrastructure is incredible. So, you know, the organization is very consistent. The dedication of the parents and the willingness of the people to coach, as you said, scorekeep, and even referee, having rules that people have to follow, and also the fun that the people have. If anybody is foreign to this, go to a gym and go see one of the games. You're going to see generations sitting in the bleachers, young kids, the parents, the grandparents, the great great grandparents, and they're there to see their relative running up and down the court. You know, especially at a young age, really not doing anything, right? Just up and down the court. But the participation and the dedication and the support that we have for the younger generation is extraordinary. I don't think you could replicate that in any other community than ours.
Very well said. Well, Gene, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us. Your experience and knowledge is outstanding as always. We're going to probably wrap this up. I could remind you again, if you want a little bit more history on the NAU, please go to our Keiro website under news for Chris Komai's article. For those of you who are with us, thank you very much for joining. If you gained anything out of this, please make sure you tell your friends. All the support that we can get for Keiro is always appreciated. And you can follow us on Facebook and also on Instagram. And also at Keiro Connect. Until the next time, I wish you all blue skies and green lights, and all stay well.